Hello everyone, Eric here, Inkenstein with another currently inked for the month of February. This is an unusual month for me. I didn't do one last month because I ended up coming back from the holidays with the flu and my voice was completely gone. So I felt miserable. I felt pretty awful as far as my voice went, so it would have been no fun. I also am making some changes this month. I have changed to use this MD notebook instead of the CD notebook that I was using previously, mostly because the ink I don't feel really held well on the pages and really wasn't showing off a lot of its highlights, as you can see from some of these older ones. They were there, but they just didn't pop the way I wanted them to. So we're going to try this MD paper one. I made a little template here to help me on my blotter paper, and we're going to go through and show off some pens and some inks. I'm going to start this month with a number of new pens since the last time I did a currently inked. This one is, I love this pen. I got this right around the holidays. It's from Shibui North, which is a maker based in the UK, and I believe it is a she, makes lovely, lovely pens. This is, as you can see, this is a metal pen, and the skull pattern is etched into the metal. It's just absolutely lovely. And here's the capper, literally under the cap. The nib itself also has a skull pattern on it. Hope you can see that. It's really cool. Oh, see, already first ink spot. So, and for this pen, I have currently Sailor Shikiori Kasasagi. Kasasagi is how I always say it. I never even think about what the other part of the name is. It's a beautiful kind of gray, blue, a little bit of green in there, almost black when you're writing with it in the ink. So I'll show you what it looks like. This pen is very heavy, but you know, I don't mind heavy pens. So to me, this is quite fine. I like big pens. I like heavy pens. Kind of the opposite of a lot of other people who enjoy fountain pens. So this is Shibui North. I believe it's called the Little Fox. This is a type of pen, and the ink is Sailor Shikiori Kasasagi. Oh, and also the nice thing, the cap will screw into the top of the pen like that, which is very nice. Again, really a lot of weight on this pen. And I know most of these currently inks, I'm focusing much more on the ink than the pen. I've seen a lot of comments that you like to learn about the pens too, so I'm trying to really balance out. This Kasasagi ink is great because you could use this for almost anything. It's great for correspondence. It's a really heavily saturated ink. It's got a lot of really interesting characteristics to it. I love when I'm writing correspondence with an ink that like appears to be one thing and clearly isn't. This appears almost like a black, but when you look at it, it has got lots of blue and lots of gray and lots of green. So that's a fantastic pen. Fantastic ink combination. Very happy for that. Again, here's the bottle, which I forgot to show earlier. Very nice ink. I always put those stickers on top so I can see them when they're sitting in the drawer. I do not keep my inks in their boxes. I think it just takes up too much space. Okay, so this is a great pen. This is, like I said, a number of these pens are new. This is from GW Pens, also here in New Jersey where I live. And this is a pen. This wood is teak, which is made from the decking on the USS New Jersey, which is a battleship that saw a lot of action during the Korean War, I believe, was where most of its service was. You can see the GW on the nib there. Very nice. The blue, kind of getting into the naval theme, the water theme. And then, of course, this lovely teak, which is just like silky smooth, very nicely finished. The cap, I believe, is ebonite, but has the USS New Jersey on it. BB62, which is, I think, its designation. And it's just a really nice Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful pen. It does not post, which is fine. And in it, I put Colorverse Brinicles, which is one of the inks. This was on day 15 of this year's Inkvent 2024 calendar. I got both the Colorverse and the Diamine calendars, and obviously each had in it 24 or 25 bottles of ink. And it's obviously added a lot of bulk to my collection. They store pretty well because the bottles are all very small. I'll show you in a second. This is a lovely blue that I like. You'll notice this month, for some reason, completely by accident, I've really gravitated almost completely, maybe it's a winter thing, into cool colors. Lots of blues, purples, grays. You'll see a lot of that in this collection for this month. This is it says it's 15 milliliters. That's pretty generous for 15 milliliters. I think when I see these bottles, it's probably a little bit more than that. And this is the size bottles you get in that Colorverse calendar. I tell you, there's some people are not that hot on the Colorverse and Diamine Advent calendars. And I tell you, this is a great deal it's a great deal for ink, and you also get a lot of inks you wouldn't have expected to get. So let's see, GW pens. See, it's lovely. It's got some nice shading to it as well. And this is the USS New Jersey. Again, this is the actual teak decking from the battleship. It was decommissioned, obviously. You can really see that shading popping out here. I find the shading to be very paper dependent. It's some it shows up on, some it just doesn't. So again, the USS New Jersey pen from GW Pen, and I'm gonna mess this up. It's supposed to be under here. It's supposed to be Colorverse Brinicles, and all the Colorverse inks in their calendar are kind of astronomy themed. So next, this is a pen I picked up recently at the Philadelphia Pen Show. I was going by and was talking to the gentleman who is manning the luxury brands, and I looked at this pen, which is kind of odd looking pen. Obviously, the odd texture. It's got roses and skulls all over it, as you can see. Very dark. And I looked at it. He's like, "Oh, that's on sale. Usually it's $200 and some. I'll sell it to you for $150 or whatever." Like, really, why? It's a Bennu pen. It's called Skull and Roses, which is for an appropriate title. He's like, "Well, I guess people don't want to buy black skulls and roses." So you see the body is completely roses, and the cap has roses and skulls on it. I really like this. It's kind of funky pen. Despite the texture and how it is, it actually fits really well in the hand. It would be a good traveler pen. It's kind of petite and small. And in it, I put, I don't even have a bottle for it. This is a sampler I got from Van Ness Pens of Noodler's Bay State Concord Grape. And I tell you, I've heard the reputation of the Bayside Blue from Noodler's ink as being like, it stains so much that you need to keep it like in a pen and never use any other ink in that pen. I never, as a result, I've been scared to try Bay State Blue, so I never even have gotten a sample of it. This has the same qualities to it. While I was inking up this pen with this ink, I spilled a little bit on my finger, and it took days for it to come off. Days. I didn't want to think about what it's going to be like to clean this pen if I could ever clean it. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. But it's a lovely purple. I recently got Birmingham's Pop Art purple, and I don't know if it was just my bottle or what, but man, that stuff came out very dark, and it's like you can't even really tell it's purple. So this is the Bennu Skull and Roses pen. The ink is Noodler's Bayside Concord Grape. And it's a deeply saturated ink. It's a high staining ink. I'd be really careful using this ink if you wanted to try it. I love getting sample bottles because this could probably be enough to fill the pen 2 or 3 times, and that may be all I'm interested in something. If I get a sample of something, and I've got a ton of samples in the other room, I put them in these little vials. I got a medical vial tray for like $6 on Amazon. I pop them all down in there. I've got a separate swatch ring of just these, and it's a great way to test inks to see if you really like an ink, and if you like it enough that you are inking it 3 times, you should probably buy a bottle of it. So that's I'll show you what the card looks like for that. It's a really highly saturated purple ink. And again, in this funky pen, which I'm going to love. I don't know how practical it is, but I'm using it now. Another recent acquisition was this Franklin Christoph pen. It's all ebonite. It's called their Cathedral pen. Franklin Christoph. It's 46 Black Plus Cathedral. It's got this beautiful little colored, we can see that really well, colored resin cap on both ends, and a lovely body. It posts, just feels perfect in the hand. It's like perfectly balanced pen. And in it, I put in Diamine Icy Lilac, which is, this is one of the bottles that the ink vent calendar from Diamine came in. These Colorverse bottles are glass, and they're really nice, and they're very typical of their normal bottles. These Diamine, which they hold less ink. There's less ink in here. It says 12 milliliters, but I can't believe that these two are only 3 milliliters apart. So this seems low to me. This seems big to me. So for the size they state, but it's a shimmer ink, which, I'm not a huge fan of shimmer inks. I keep wanting to like shimmer inks. I think some shimmer inks are beautiful looking, and they are completely impractical to use. I've never figured out a way to use them. So I decided I would try it with this pen because this is a medium nib pen, and I've had pretty good luck of getting it to actually flow well on the page. It comes out real dark, and the shimmer really emerges as it dries. So we'll put a little block here. This is the Franklin Christoph 46 Black Cathedral, and the ink inside is Diamine Icy Lilac, which performs pretty well on the page. It's really legible. I've done a couple. I don't know if anybody else participates in the Inkorimo month, where you write basically letters to a bunch of strangers every day for the month of February. I have been trying to do that. So far, so good. But see, it does get a little splotchy, this ink, as you can see here. I noticed that when I was writing with it. Sometimes this is where you're seeing the ink without the shimmer, is the dark parts, and the light parts have some of the shimmer in them. And you can see that contrast here of like there's some dark parts. That's why I went over it a second time on the swatch card. You can see underneath the shimmer. One thing I will say about this Diamine shimmer from the ink vent calendar is that the particles of shimmer are so teeny tiny that I'm a little bit more optimistic that they'll flow well through a pen. I haven't tried very much of doing shimmer inks in dip pens, and I guess I should really try that. Okay, so next up is a really interesting ink and pen combo. This is from Stex. It's a Stex. I think it's 137 is the model number, and this is made of copper. This is not brass. It is copper. It is, again, a very heavy pen. It posts on the back by screwing in. Nice nib on it, as you can see. And it's got the weight to it, and it smells like a penny. And in it, I put Diamine Sleigh Ride, which is one of the Ink Vent inks. You'll notice it is a red, like a reddish brown ink with a monster super sheen of green. And it looks really great on a page, and I figured with the green sheen on top of that reddy coppery red, it'd be great from a copper pen. So that's what I have done with this. So there's the swatch card. And again, nothing much about the bottle. It's one of these little tiny bottles that came with the Inkvent calendar. This also is a medium nib pen. I've gotten a few medium nibs lately because I wanted to see how they perform with shimmer and with inks with some characteristics to them, whether it be shimmer or sheen. Sticks, 137 copper, and this Diamine Sleigh Ride. Again, it comes out on the page like almost like a burnt red, which is nice, but it does have that sheen to it that is really appealing. When you're writing with it, it really makes it pop. I just can't do anything consistently today where I'm putting titles and I'm doing my marks. I'm out of shape. Again, last month, I really wanted to do Currently Ink, and I missed doing it. But it was just not practical for my voice was literally completely gone. I couldn't say a word. Okay, next is, this is a Pelikan M805. And for those of you who are curious, the difference between an 800, which is a very popular Pelikan model, and an 805 is the hardware here is silver instead of gold colored. Again, in this pen, I have Colorverse Cape May. Again, 15 milliliter bottle. Just bought this at a pen show recently at the Philadelphia Pen Show when I bought that copper pen. I've also bought this ink. This Pelikan is very much of an everyday writer for me. Or one of my everyday writers. It's the one that tends to travel around with me. .805. The ink is Colorverse Cape May. There's a number of Colorverse inks related to destinations around the United States. And I don't know why Cape May showed up on their radar for a South Korean ink company, but it did. And I, being a proud New Jersey resident, purchased it basically because it said Cape May on it. I'm sure they sell a lot of ink that way. So that's the Pelikan 805, the Cape May from Colorverse. Love that 805. It never does me wrong. Okay, this is a pen from D.R. Reese, who I actually have two of his pens. This is the second one. Picked this up from him. Great, solid pen. Very pleased with it. I love maker pens just in general. I think it's a lot more fun to buy a pen from a maker than it is to buy it from a big company. I find myself leaning more and more when I go to pen shows or a pen shop. I'm looking at the maker pens, if they have them, rather than the large makers of pens. The other pen I have from him doesn't have a clip. The other pen I have from him is very unusual pen, but this is much more of a standard pen. I kind of cherish the other pen and don't want to take it anywhere because I love it so much. And the ink for this one is another one of the Inkvent inks. It's another one of the Colorverse inks. It's called Morning Glow. Here's the bottle for it. I love it. It is a chromatic ink. You can see lots going on in this ink. You can see obviously grays. You can see some pinks in this, in the shading. You can also see almost like some bluish grays or different varieties of grays. I just love the pink and the gray together. And as you can see in the writing here, it's great because I think a great sheening ink, a great chromatic ink, doesn't show off its properties too quickly. I think like this Stex, the Stex pen with the Diamine Sleigh Ride, this is trying a little too hard because it's like so overwhelming. The sheen you see on this, it's like so overwhelming you almost can't see the base color. That's working a little too hard, demanding a little too much attention. I find myself much more a fan of things that are much subtler, both in their color properties and in their presentation on the page as you're writing. And that's why I've kind of found myself more and more inking chromatic inks and getting a bunch of samples of chromatic inks because I think they are much more interesting to me. Again, when I write someone a letter, well, that's not the right ink, is it? Okay, well, maybe it is. Well, that looks a lot different than the swatch card, doesn't it? Part of me wants to just quickly test this again, make sure I've got the right ink in here. Yep, it's right. Why is that looking so light on my... And then compare that to it's coming out of this pen. I guess it is right. Strange. Okay. But even you can see here the chromatics coming out. You're seeing the greens and the pinks. And it's a lovely, lovely, lovely ink. So while I have completely botched my video here, I'll probably leave most of this in. But it is the right ink. It just kind of, for some reason, was coming out of the pen and looking a little different. Yeah, well, I guess as it dries, you can see it a little bit more. You can definitely see it in there. So I'm going to keep all this in the video, but boy, that was like a little unexpected twist there. Sorry about that. Hope you didn't mind. This next one, boy, this ink. I don't even have a sample bottle of this. I'm literally, the remainder of this ink I have in this pen is in this pen. I was given a sample of the Wet Pens Deception Pass. Talk about, look at that sheen and look at that chromatic. It's just crazy, this ink. It has got, you see the blues and the greens and the dark blues, and there's purples in there. It's just intense and amazing, amazing, amazing color. The gentleman who, I love this so much. Yeah, I have a couple of samples of his inks. I wrote him because every one of his inks on his website from the Wet Pen is sold out. And I said, God, I'm really going to miss this ink when it's gone. And he's promised he will make some more. I'm still waiting for that to happen and see how that goes. So this is a platinum 3776. And the ink is the Wet Pen Deception Pass. See, it just looks great on the page. It looks great on the swatch card. It's just an amazing, smart ink, and I can't wait for him to make some more. That's a terrific. Please make some of that more. Okay, so I was going to do the Writer's Blood, which I have, but I'm going to skip ahead because I want to show this off. This is Birmingham Ink Company's Sterling Silver. There is nothing in this ink other than ink. There's no particles. There's no shimmer. It is just a combination of great sheening and shading. And I just love this ink. And it goes on, it looks a little purpley, which is fine. And it dries, it really does look silver, as you can see. Oh, and this is a custom 76. '74, excuse me. And this is Birmingham sterling silver. And you can see here, it kind of goes on. It looks like a bit of a mess. But when we come back to this a little bit, you can even see it here. It dries so nice. It really does look silver, and it's not a fussy ink. It really goes on well, even though it doesn't look, it kind of looks like a mess when you're writing with it. It dries and just looks fantastic. I really recommend this ink. And not the one downside is it comes in the 100 milliliter bottle. I have no idea how I'm ever going to use up this ink, but it is definitely worth playing around with. Perhaps you have a buddy, you can split a bottle of this or what have you. Okay, and I have two runners up this month that were stories in itself. I went over the holidays. I went to visit a relative who lives in Paris, and took this pen with me, which is a Lincoln leather pen. If you watch my videos in the past, you know I use this pen a lot. It's just a great pen. I can't recommend it enough. It's comfortable. The hardware is fantastic. It's just a really well put together pen. And I put into it this Jacquemin ink, which I believe is Le Tour de Paris, which translates to the roofs of Paris. And I found this to be, I took it with me on the trip. I figured, isn't that nice? I will take a pen with some French-themed ink in it. Isn't that a quaint idea? And it is a kind of finicky ink. It doesn't sit well on the page. It runs thin. It's just wasn't tremendously a great ink to have on the road. See already I'm starting to have some problems with it. And this isn't a pen. This pen is like a beautiful writer. And this ink just really was not a pleasure to try to use on the road. I was pulling it apart and priming the converter almost every time I wrote with it, as I'm tempted to do now, but I'm just dealing with this. So I'm putting this here basically to say that this ink, there's a sample ink. I just got a small amount of it, and I won't be buying it because it just was kind of a, so that's goodbye for this. And then also what I also took is my EDC on that trip where I was in London and Paris for a week. This Shone Mini 6, which colors on it, just a beautiful pen, really well put together as you would expect. And I put into it one of the Inkvent colors, which was the Neptune Oculation, which is one of the Inkvent calendar options for this year. Beautiful ink, and it behaves so well. It's not trying to do much other than just be a great ink. Dark purple color here. And the Colorverse Neptune Oculation. At the end of the Colorverse calendar month, you were given a Google form that you could vote for your favorite inks, which I guess will have some impact, or at least they say it will have some impact on the inks that they've decided to put into larger production runs during the year. And this was one of the 3 that I voted for because it is not trying to be too fancy. It just writes really well. It's a wet ink, but keeps its act together. It's under control and just really kind of comes together nicely. So that's my take for this month. I hope you enjoyed listening to me rant on about inks and pens. It was a while. I promise I'll have a March one more on time than January and February, and I hope you're well, and you feel free to make comments. I love reading the comments, and I respond to everyone, and hope you're all well. Bye.